So with that, I will be your host today. I'm Liz Hartman, Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome everybody to our last virtual Friday networking for this month or until things change. I think all of you have heard by now that on March 19th, the mask mandate will be over for the state of Oregon, and on April 1st, the emergency order from the governor will be finished. So we have some exciting months ahead of us. Your chamber membership is going to help those opportunities in Lake Oswego as we continue to support Lake Oswego as a great place to live, work, and play. We have a brand new member with us this morning. We'll let her introduce herself after the presentation by Neal and Nicole. With that, I will ask you all to put yourselves on mute. And following the presentation, we will do a quick run around the board since we have someone new here. But Neal Bauer is one of our ambassadors, as is Nicole Nathan. Nicole is with the Arts Council, and Neal is with two companies, and he can give you how his affiliation is with those two companies. But we were talking about things that chamber members would want to know that would have a little value added. And the fact is, we don't all know about QR codes, and during the pandemic, QR codes became pretty common in a lot of our lives and a lot of our businesses. So Neal and Nicole are here today to talk about how QR codes can be used and give you just a beginning primer on how it can affect your businesses. With that, I turn it over to Nicole Nathan and Neal Bauer.
Well, thanks everyone. As Liz said, I'm Nicole Nathan. I'm from the Arts Council of Lake Oswego, and thank you, Robin, for getting up early and joining us. Neal put together this amazing presentation, and he's going to lead us through for the most part, and then I'm just going to interject here and there. But as we were talking about that, we had this short conversation, and it came up in one of our last chamber networking, is that, you know, QR codes, what they're back, or they didn't go away, or what's happening with them. Are they new? Are they old? What's the deal with these things? You know, when we've gone to restaurants during the pandemic, that's now how we use them a lot of times, with accessing menus and things like that. But there's so much more. So at this point, I want to turn it over to Neal, and he's going to give you all kinds of information, and we're going to just have a great conversation about these weird boxes that you see now everywhere.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole, for introducing this. How many views already use QR codes? Great, 2, 3, 4, a good chunk. That's great, awesome. So this is just a refresher. So this is kind of definitely a 101 course. I kind of wanted to show this because, again, we are dealing with several different generational groups in the chamber. So I kind of wanted to get a big, broad spectrum. So anybody know, like they look new, right? Like everybody was talking about how new QR codes are, and they're like, oh, they're everywhere. They've been around for a long time, but they started getting more and more popularity due to COVID because nobody wanted to touch anything, and scanning became like the new thing, and people became more comfortable with it here in the US, but it's been around a little bit longer than you'd think. Well, if I'm not going to do it, I'll just go through it. QR codes as we know them now began all the way back in 1994. And they were created by the Toyota company, believe it or not, out of a necessity, because Toyota was using them for inventory management, warehouse management, parts, and shipping information. So they came up with this homogenized code, but it actually goes back even further than this. The start of QR codes began as a solution to a problem called carpal tunnel syndrome, which grew out of the 10 key business. So let's see if I can even get this to work. Yes. So when Japan hit a period of economic growth in the 1960s, their supermarkets started to expand beyond just offering food. They offered wares, they offered clothing, they offered gear. So every one of those had to be manually entered into a 10 key type machine. And because of this, cashier started suffering from carpal tunnel syndrome. We started getting that in the US because of video games, but it's gone around for a while. So QR codes is an old technology. And so all the people that are fearful of like, what is this? I don't know what it is effectively just a barcode. So I want to kind of, oh, and I do realize that Eye of the Tiger is not from 1969. It's from 1982. So our QR code is, like I said, essentially a barcode, just a bit smarter. So barcode has effectively 20 lines. There's a lot of tech people here. They know how barcodes work. But the idea is that a QR code, does anybody know what QR stands for? No?
No, Neil, what does QR stand for?
Well, that's a great question, Nicole. QR codes stands for quick response. Now, the reason that's important, and it's the same reason I brought up the grocery store, is that's where it comes from. Quick response is a way of doing inventory management. So back when supermarkets needed to track inventory, and as I said, they're growing, they needed to track it in real time with fresh produce, communicating the needs for goods to meet consumer demands required quick response. So the QR code actually comes from the barcode creation in the 60s. So QR, as I said, when people are thinking they're new, it's the name itself goes back to the 60s. So the biggest difference again is that a QR code it provides an actionable item. And a lot of people here are already using QR codes. I just want to kind of allay the fears that a QR code functions like a PowerPoint hyperlink. Like if you're in a PowerPoint presentation and someone's like, well, I'm not clicking on that link because I don't know where it goes to. I'm like, it's a PowerPoint presentation. It's not going to, you're getting a PowerPoint presentation. You shouldn't fear clicking that link in that PowerPoint presentation. So the actionable item usually is for stuff like, a business card or a menu like we just talked about here, or, for travel or verifying personal information. So that was to allay fears. And then I go right into if anybody who hasn't scanned a QR code, all they do is when you're in public, you put your phone up now. You don't even have to open a QR code app, but you scan it. And when you scan that item, it triggers an action, whether it be opening a website or adding to opening up your contacts, creating a text message. It just creates an actionable item on top. So this week, knowing that this QR code conversation was coming up, I got this article sent to me by 4 wonderful people here in the chamber. They are awesome. Anastasia, Nicole, you're wonderful. Thank you. Everybody who sent this to me, it's great. The fear of like, oh my gosh, people who scanned that QR code during the Super Bowl. It's like the FBI wants it, whether the FBI wants to talk to me. There is, just like with any technology, there's a way to exploit it. Credit cards, you have the skimmers. People put the little reader over top of an ATM that can skim your data. Gift cards, an industry that's closed loop, you can't really steal it, but then they have these elderly scams where they're calling elderly people saying that they owe money or they're going to be going to jail. You have to use gift cards. Like people are going to find nefarious ways to use these things. But the reality is that if you're scanning a QR code, you should just use the ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If you're in a meeting like this and you see a QR code, that should be fine to scan. If you're seeing a Coinbase commercial during the Super Bowl, that should be okay to scan because there's a lot of skin and you've got they should be okay. But if you're in a subway and you see like win $1 million by scanning this link and it's like put on by a sticker, maybe don't scan that one, right? Just like use some common sense when scanning QR codes. If it's in a grocery store, if it's in a poster, public square that you generally go to, we at Lake Oswego usually have a lot of QR codes around. You'll start seeing them more and more. A realtor hands you a card with a QR code in the back. These are all fine examples. If you're at a convention, fine example. But again, if you find one that's like in a spam inbox, like, whoa, it's a QR code, just say that's a good example. If you treat QR codes like spam, if you're expecting to see a QR code, great. If it pops out of nowhere and you don't know where it's from, maybe don't scan it. So that's all I was saying. Like, thank you for everybody sending it over, but QR codes are really just code. And here's how they kind of work. And again, if I'm going too fast, talking too fast, let me know. I just kind of want to chew through these slides, but
Actually, Neil, I was just gonna say, so if you go back to the last slide, just really briefly. So everyone, if you happened to be watching the Super Bowl, how many of you saw that commercial where you saw this QR code just like bouncing across the screen like you were playing Pong in Atari? So it was a little unnerving because there was no text, there was nothing there. And I looked at that and I was like, huh, I don't really think I want to scan that, but I probably would. But again, that's, and that basically broke that company's internet
yeah,
for a few days. But yeah, something like that. Oh, maybe I'm a little hesitant about that. But again, if it's something that you're getting from a trusted source, or it doesn't, and you use kind of those same rules that you're thinking about when you see potential spam. It's the QR code in and of itself is not bad. It's just a mechanism. And of course, anybody can use whatever to get what they want. So
yeah. And
I think the first giveaway for me might have been the fact that there's a skull right in the middle of this one too.
Mhm.
see, that's what makes us different. I would likely click on that one just to be like, what's this about? But like you said, in the Super Bowl, who's going to pay $6-7 million to put a QR code up there? There's probably somebody that's the peak interest. But that was a mistake on Coinbase's part. Coinbase has come out this week and said that was like, we compromised the entire integrity of our system for just a little bit of publicity. So you probably won't see that type of engagement again. So yeah, but thank you for filling it in, Nicole. I kind of want to just basically say how a QR code works. There's certain parts of a QR code. Everybody recognizes those big 3 boxes up like on a QR code. And all of those, basically those are just for the scanner. Most of this code is for the scanner to recognize what this thing is. Those 3 big boxes are for positioning, to basically say which direction is this facing. Because a UPC, it would be a horizontal scan. That's it. Horizontal meets horizontal with the beam. With the QR code, it can be sideways, upside down, at an angle. You see how quick they are now. Whoever has a modern day phone, like I think iPhone 11 and up, if you put the phone, before you even have the thing in frame, it's locked in on the QR code. It's because the positioning is so good and the lines are the resolution of those cameras is so clear. So those 3 boxes are to recognize what position it's in. And then there's another box in the opposite corner. That's to basically lock the alignment. Like, where is it? Is it which way? So those are all positioning. Then you've got your time, so you've got your format, because there are, your format is more or less, I'm not even going to go into detail, but it's basically an error, making sure to cut down on errors. This is just something for your scanner. Timing is basically how many lines. Right here, we have a 29. This is what they call a type 3 QR code. This is the most recent QR code. It has 29 lines. The original ones or earlier ones had like 21, there's 25. This one has 29 lines. The timing section of this code tells the QR scanner how many lines there are. And then you've got this information, which version, because there are multiple versions of QR codes. There's 7 mainstream, but there's 40 total. But anyways, like, we're only going to be talking about 2, static and dynamic. But that is the versioning. All of that is just for the scanner. The information that is scanned is just right here. That's the content. That's the URL. That's the business card. That's all that. That's the data in just that section. So everything else is just for the scanner to recognize what it's looking at. And everything else, as I said. So hopefully that kind of clarifies the breakdown. I should have said not safe for work. We're dissecting if anybody got sickened by me dissecting that and showing the anatomy, I apologize in advance. So we talked about the QR codes. There are multiple kinds, but we're going to be talking about 2. We're going to be talking about static QR codes and dynamic. Static codes are recognizable by just how much information you'll see. It looks like normal QR codes when you see them, and you're like, oh, they're got 3 big blocks and then this little piece of information. This one looks like a player piano's music, because its information is hard baked into the code. So this is very dense. You'll recognize a static QR code. It's less scannable than normal codes, but it is just like you can't change or modify any of this information. That static code contains this information that is going to be extracted. It's like a punch card. So can't change it, can't modify it. And it's very unique what the use cases are for these. So I just want to make you aware of that, this doesn't allow for tracking or data. So you wouldn't likely use this for your personal information or for your general business information. There's, I'm going to show an example later, but a good example of this is if like somebody, if you're buying a shipment of lumber, like you're a construction company, you're buying a shipment of lumber from Canada, you can have a QR code basically drafted at the location where it was originated. So you know the shipping company, you know the date it was cut, you know what type of wood it is, you know what lot it's run on. That's this kind of information. Lots of information, but it's embedded in the code. And again, doesn't require, like this code likely wouldn't require an internet connection. And even if it did connect to a system, you'd need a login and password. So static, got that out of the way. Now we're going to be talking about nothing but dynamic. Dynamic codes are the ones we are comfortable with, the ones that are in the Super Bowl ads. These are easier to scan. They've been perfected over time. Let's see, I got to scroll up on my notes. These are what you'll see 95% of the time. They have a lot more customization. You can do, you've seen them with the little logos in them. You've seen them with different colors. You've seen them with different borders. You've seen them with different dot patterns. This is kind of, dynamic has a lot of customization. And the backend content is often modifiable. So if you have a business card with a QR code on it and you change your phone number or you change your address, you're like, well, I have to throw all these business cards away. No, those QR codes can generally be modified or often be modified on the back end. And then you can track info as well. So if anybody works on website or has websites, you know that when someone hits your website, you get a lot of info. You get like what operating system they're using, what you can get down to what monitor resolution they're using. That's the kind of tracking info you're getting. You're basically getting what time of day, what location, what device. So you can get that. So you can know when traffic, if someone goes, you have a QR code at an event, or if you have a QR code at a location, you can see when traffic ramps up. So you can make business decisions based on that. All right, so that's static and dynamic. There's a lot of information. I'm sorry, there's so much. So there are, what's the importance? It looks like a lot of you are already using this, but there are business uses from business and operations through healthcare, through education, through just using it to send people to your Crafty Wonderland booth or, you know, invitations to your gender reveal party, whatever. But here's just a few of them, and just kind of, you can write these down real quick. There's just one or two quick examples of how retailers and people are using them. But here's a much better one. Let's do it this way. The list is pretty much endless. It's like having a modular website where you can put links to anything from expanded information to, you know, social likes, where you can just scan it and like it. You can do it where you can automatically pay somebody. You can do like any number of items. And so depending on what your business case is, you can have it to where, and I'm going to show that. That's the next slide. And I'm going to have Nicole take over at this point. But there are so many ways to utilize QR codes that it's almost impossible to kind of nail it down. It's basically the sky's the limit. Perfect example is a barcode can only scan 20 lines. When you're talking about QR codes, it's like thousands upon thousands of lines. The thing is that that's kind of the difference between a barcode and a QR code. It's like what you can do with a barcode is tag data and tag information. What you can do with a QR code is like 1,000 times greater. So with that, I'm going to say, I wanted to share a couple of examples of how people in the chamber and people here are actively using codes in their business. And so this is where you take over, Nicole.
Yeah, thank you. So we have used, not used for a while, went back to, stopped using QR codes for about the last, probably, I'm going to say 6 to 8 years. So one of the things when I got here about 5 years ago at the Arts Council, on our sculpture tour, so on the little labels that are outside on the sculptures, there was a QR code that was embedded in the tag there, and it would take you to our website. And that was really cool. It seemed to work. And we, those were things that we had to print every year, have made every year. So we did them as normal the first year, and that was about 2016. And then as we moved into 2017, we were like, who's using these anymore? It really seemed like QR codes kind of like they were hot for a minute and then they went away. We were also redoing our website. We were doing all different kinds of things to kind of rebrand and do some different things. So what we did is we took the QR codes out of our labels, because we were like, and I think at that point we were probably using one that, and we didn't understand probably the extent of, could we change this? Could it go to a different spot? Was it modifiable? So anyway, we took those off our labels, and we started going to, here you can go to our website. Here's a way you can access this information. And then probably about, Robin, would you say maybe about 2 years ago, 2.5, we started using them again?
Sorry, yes, probably about almost 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. And so it seemed like, again, with the onset of the pandemic, that a lot of places were, it's like they were back. And again, we know that they never really went away and that they've been around for quite a while, but there was this resurgence. And so we started using them for a few different things. We used one for one of our Gallery Without Walls celebrations. We started using them for getting information out there. And as you can see, here are just 2 examples of how we have used QR codes in the last 8 months, year. So in the middle there, this is one of our exhibitions that we had last fall in our new space. And right down here in the bottom of this text, you'll see a little QR code there. And what that did is, here you are in this exhibition, and maybe you want to know more about each of the artists. Well, we had some handouts there, which you could take with you, but you also could access all that information on your phone just by scanning this QR code. So it took you to the very same document, but then you could read it at your leisure. You could read it at home. You didn't have to take the piece of paper. If you weren't there, you could also access that information. So that was pretty interesting. And we've been gradually kind of reintegrating those back into what we do. On the right-hand side, this is something that we did just in January. So I know that many of you participated and came to join us at Art Mart. And what that is it's an in-person event, an exhibition that we have, but then we also have, as part of that, we have an online auction. And so some of the pieces that are donated to us are just of a little bit different caliber. And what we want to do is select those and pull those out and make them very special. And so we usually have some sort of auction on them. And what we did this year is our 5 or 6 pieces that we had for the auction, you could view them at Merrillhurst, where we had our retail location. And then also there was a little card that you could take with you. You could scan the QR code right there and get more information about the auction. It would take you to the auction website. It would take you to where the information was, how you could start bidding, all of that. So you could pick up the card and take it with you, or you could scan it right there and get more information. So that then someone didn't have to be there going, this is how you access the auction. This is what you do. Here's all, here's a page of directions. It was really easy because then it just took you right there. And so what I think for the future for us, for QR codes, again, I think we're just going to keep using them in all different kinds of situations. The auction software that we use, We will be having an event coming up in May, and most likely people will register or they can probably check in that way. That's how they can look at the catalog beforehand. And I bet we will at some point probably go back to embedding those QR codes in our labels for our outdoor sculptures. We went for a hot minute, about a year and a half or 2 years, we've had a text to number. So you've texted a code to a local 503 number, and then you got the link back in your text messages. What I think we probably will do, we'll go back to a QR code, because a lot of those are sometimes free and you can track the analytics and the data. So it's more cost effective for us to go to return to a QR code. That does mean we have to change some signage, but that can be a sticker. There are ways around it. Robin, what do you want to add? Robin is the person who does the QR codes, so. He
I
should
don't
have been
know.
doing
You
that.
you guys have done a good job relative to explaining it all, but just to add on to Nicole's point, it's really interesting, the evolution of QR codes, because they've been around forever. And, then like Nicole said, for a hot minute, everybody wanted to use text and SMS. And so we kind of got on that train. But I think that was a little tougher to do for people to execute. And now people are much more used to QR codes. Again, thank you, COVID. Not really, but that is how we got reintroduced into it. And now people, with the invention of smartphones that automatically just read it, you don't have to have a special app to read the QR code. So I think it will continue to be evolutionary in marketing and promotion.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Neal and Nicole. And would you entertain a couple of questions if anybody has?
Wait, Liz, there's more.
Okay.
So we'll get through this. We'll chew through this because I know we're running. I don't want to take too much more time, but the idea is can I go through the rest of them? Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So other people, Laura James is a realtor that used to be part of the chamber, and she might still be, but we just did her site last year, and she was looking for ways to get people to submit more testimonials. QR codes are a great way to do that, because before you would have to be like, go to the site, then go to the testimonials page, then go to the bottom and submit a testimonial, and then go fill out the form, and then whatever. Well, now you can just have them at an open house or at the sale, have it on a closing doc, scan it, and it goes right to the page. They can submit the testimonial from there, but you can also use it before that for listings themselves. You'll see them on their business cards now. They'll have their listings, or they have like direct access to individual realtors. Like, hey, I have a buying question, or I have a selling question, or I have a technical question. You can send the information right to the person using a QR code. And there are tons of people here right now, like Amy from Dino's. I'm not sure if you use QRs for, yeah, but there's several ways you can use it for couponing, getting things on like flyers for football, like for Lake Ridge, Lake Oswego football, travel. Jamie, I'm sure you're dealing with these things all the time, just from a travel, like printing them out. Did Jamie go? I think he might have. Anyways, bottom line, he may have just turned his video off, but there are a lot of people. And then Whitney, like from an organizational standpoint, we've got it down to where our QR codes are color coded. So when it's in the public, like we'll see in public, oh, this is red, this has to deal with design, or this is blue, it has to do with business. So there's ways to kind of organize your public persona based on just coloring and other parameters. Anyways, for sporting events, I just wanted to get the static codes. The Anaheim Ducks just did a static code for at the game. If you attended the game, you got this card. They gave you a home and away jersey for your Animal Crossing character. That's a static code. So that static code had all of that data. And then once you connected it to your Nintendo account, that code could not be used anymore. So that's a good example of, you'll see static codes in the wild where, like, where do we see them? These are dynamically generated. They can only be used once and connected to an account. So that's one use. We used QR codes at a sporting event in September, helping a charity called Merging Vets and Players put on a kickball tournament at SoFi Stadium. at a Los Angeles Rams game, they were able to scan a QR code from the Jumbotron or from the program to be entered into the contest. Winners from that contest, all you had to do is scan it, enter your information, and then you get submitted and you get to play, if you're a winner, a kickball game. And then you'll see these on concert tickets where you can use them for like everything from, you know, validation of the ticket to maybe a link to special merchandise, or even like, I know that some sporting teams say like, hey, if the Timbers score more than 7 goals, you bring your QR code to Wendy's and get a free chili or something like that. So there's promotional opportunities there as well. There are, if anybody has to create codes, we can go through these, but there's 2 types of codes. We call them dynamic code generators online. You've likely seen them. They're like QR code monkey, QR code generator. Those are free-ish. And then there's the free but. So you're going to be like, okay, you have QR code generator listed twice. No, one is the QR code generator. One is the QR code generator, and one is QR code generator. There are several of those, but there's free-ish is that it's free to use. It's easy. You can add logos. You can do the same stuff. But if you want to do anything that requires you to change or track, there's a cost associated with it. So it's free to just make a code. But if you want to do anything with it beyond that, you're going to need to pay a subscription. The free but is like the QR code generator. And those are great because they have like a Chrome extension. They're free as well. The problem is you don't know who's tracking the data. So somebody like Mike, who's in IT, this is a terrible thing. You would not want to use it because you're like, my customer data is important. It needs to be locked. So you would want to go through a subscription. So if you use QR codes, you would want to go through a subscription service. So I want to kind of let people know there's tons out there. You can get them made today. You can do a quick search, but I'm going to recommend 2. And the 2 are, if you're doing it for business, I recommend Beacon Stack's QR code generator. They allow you to do a ton of security. They offer, first off, it comes with the dashboard. You can do analytics, but it integrates with platforms like Google. If you're doing some analytics work there, it has an SSO login, age-gated redirects. Like if you have a whiskey or liquor business or beer, like you can gate content based on age. It's password protected. You can do custom domains. That is a very dynamic solution, and it's $5 a month. So if you're doing it for business, need security, and are concerned about your customers clicking QR codes, that gets my thumbs up. The one that's free is Hero QR code. It's Hero QR. The reason we like it is that we've been creating QR codes since 2010. We do it for Nike, Adidas. That they get things printed on banners, billboards, and in Times Square. These Hero QR allows you to create like several different types of codes, but it allows you to also create vector. So it can be scaled to any size. So if you wanted to put it on the moon, that's the way to do it. Actually, if there's a QR code on the moon, don't scan it. That's probably somebody you don't want to have your data. But anyways, you can do a ton of stuff with Hero QR, and I can kind of walk through that. But let's see, is that the last one? Did I jump out? Hang on. Oh, how do I make one? So I've got this set. Oh, here we go. I have this presentation is available to download. And again, I don't want to steal if I can walk everybody through it, making a Hero QR code. But the idea is you would log in, you can scan this right here. Don't worry about missing it. You'll be able to download this after this presentation. You'll scan that. It'll go to Hero QR. Then you select what kind of code you want to create: text, email. You want to give somebody a Wi-Fi password or like connection to your Wi-Fi. You're not giving them your Wi-Fi password. You're giving them connection to your Wi-Fi. A Zoom meeting. You can just basically copy and paste the Zoom meeting in there and then create a QR code from that. You can pay somebody with PayPal, send an SMS, put your phone number, contact. Step 2, you just select what you want to create. And then the step 3, it's the hardest part, is you customize it with your colors. This is like for your finger paint, where you're like, okay, I'm going to use this font, or I'm going to use this border. That's the hardest part, really. And once you select all those, then you wind up just saving it, and then you test it and make sure it works. And I had Nicole test the link yesterday. I'm like, here's the thing, here's the presentation download. But yeah, you want to test it because you want to make sure it works. Because what's funny is I did this backwards. I did a QR code for the Lake Oswego Chamber of Commerce, the one at the very start of this presentation. I do not think it works anymore. I do not know what happened. I think I used the wrong URL, but I didn't test it. I didn't take my own advice. Step 4, test it. Once you save it, you test it. It's super easy to do. But again, thank you all for listening to me rattle on about that. This is available. You can scan that code right now if you want. I'll make that code available. Or this is going to be, if you just need it, put it in the contact, in the chat, and I can send you the link to it. But again, this has been how to use QR codes. If you have questions, feel free to throw them out.